Welcome Littleton to the Select Board meeting for Monday, November 4th, 6:15. We're going to begin with an executive session. Should last about 15 minutes, and then we'll reconvene in open meeting.
Move that the Select Board vote to enter the executive session number 2 pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21, 30A, Section 21, A2, to conduct strategy and preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, police union. The Select Board will adjourn executive session and will reconvene in the open session after the executive session.
Second.
Moved by Gary, second by Karen. Roll call vote. Gary?
Gary's an aye.
Karen's and I.
Mark's and I. We'll see everyone in about approximately 15 minutes. Thank you.
They're all here for the checks.
I think that some other folks in the COA want to say a couple words. They give them a big check. I think that's reasonable.
What are they here for?
They give them a check to the building. Friends give them a check.
Yeah, there's two of them. There's two checks.
One's much bigger
One's for
than
the
the
van.
other.
21,000 is for the van.
Yeah, that's the big one. Good Lord. Somebody else just wrote a check for 20. Yeah. Fantastic. Loaded.
Some friends of the senior center, some senior center. We've got everybody coming in. It's great.
So, welcome everyone to the November 4th Select Board meeting. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So we'll begin by reading the mail. We have a bunch of department updates, recognitions for EHS, Park and Rec, exemptions, DPW, snow plowing, treasurer collector for bonds. 7 o'clock we'll do a public hearing on the tax classification for FY25. We'll then do a quick update on the orchard, followed by public input, appointments to the Clean Lakes and Taxation Committee, follow up on town meeting, some follow-ups on the Collins Center update, and minutes. So we'll start with mail.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's just a few things this week. We've got the current vacancies on the town boards. We've got our Agricultural Commission, the Clean Lakes, Conservation, Cultural, Economic Development, Historical, Master Plan, Permanent Municipal Building Committee, Nagahog Hill Orchard Ad Hoc Working Group.
No.
Should we remove that?
Yes.
Okay. Taxation, Transportation Advisory Council, ZBA, and Finance Committee. And also, please everyone sign up if you haven't already. Sign up to receive public notifications for the town of Littleton. You can register by going on www.littletonma.org/subscribe. Community impacts, public safety activity, transportation, town meeting changes, public health concerns, town events. Stay informed. And we have a gift acceptance form from Liz from EHS. The offering of the gift was from Charles and Ann Lee Ellis of $5,000. Thank you very, very much for the naming rights and the new building gift to be put in the new building gift fund. And that is it.
Okay. Thank you very much for that generous donation.
Yes, very kind.
EHS recognition of another gift for the new building fund.
Here we are. Yes, we do. Thank you. Another one for Liz with EHS. From part of the gift was from David Plogger for $25,000. I hope I named that correctly. The room for room naming donor recognition, new building gift fund, $25,000. Thank you very, very much.
Want to say anything, Liz?
Yes, if I may.
Please.
Hi, good evening. I just wanted to come here today and call attention to David's very generous donation to the new building gift fund. This was one of our very first large donations, and he gave this in memorial to his wife, Carol. And I just wanted to come here tonight and have him also be here. Here he is, on the other side, and receive the recognition that he deserves for this super generous gift. I don't know if David actually wanted to say anything or just be recognized.
My wife and I have lived in town since 1985. We got married and moved in, so been there a long time. Both love the town. Carol was a big supporter of the senior center, and so I thought this would be a good way to memorialize it. So that's why I could. Of course, if she were around, she'd say, "All this tax we paid, you're giving them more money?"
Ouch.
So that's what we're doing.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. We also have some more gift acceptance. This from the Friends of the Littleton of COA for the Folly shows. Also, Liz has submitted this, $1,192 for the new building gift fund, and thank you very, very much for that.
If I may.
And here we have, oh, I'm so sorry.
Sorry, I also wanted to call attention out to Barbara McRae, who set up the Folly showings 2 different occasions and raised this very generous amount for us that goes to the new building fund. Barbara is also here. I don't know if she would like to say a few words or just be recognized. 2 or 3, if that's okay.
We're counting. Oh, that's enough.
That's okay. I'm okay. I have a good caregiver. You know, what I want to say is I want to thank the Friends Board, present and past, for all of their dedication towards the seniors. And any money presented this evening was fundraising from the Friends Boards. And I just feel that it really was a pleasure being part of that board. And I know in the future they're going to have a lot of success too. And hopefully we'll make money so that we can give to anything EHS or outreach needs when you request it, when you need it. So anyway, thank you to those boards. They have been so good and worked hard because we really cared about the seniors. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.
And another very generous gift from for the Friends. From the Friends of the Littleton COA, a gift in the amount of $21,000, which is being offered for the matching payment for the new EHS COA van.
Yes.
Yeah.
Another very, very generous donation from the Friends.
And that's it for the donations, but we do have the next thing on the agenda.
Thank you very much to the Friends for all their
Yep.
hard work in the fundraising, and keep it up.
Thanks to everyone.
What we have now, Mr. Chairman and members of the Select Board, we think it's time that we honor some very, very dedicated staff of EHS. They have, which is quite an impressive recognition. The Loaves and Fishes Food Pantry, we're grateful for all the hard work the Littleton Council on Aging does to get food to the elderly and homebound clients. And they wanted to recognize, and I'll let Liz identify those her staff members, please.
Sure. Thank you very much. Doing the food pantry deliveries in conjunction with Loaves and Fishes takes a lot of coordination, a lot of logistics. It's very complex. Sometimes we have upwards of 90 bags of food that we pick up in Devens and distribute throughout the community. This would not be possible without Alicia, Amy, Sue, Neil and Rich, Sam and Steve, and our volunteers, Marcia, Rob, Deb, and Paul. Food insecurity is a real thing here in town, unfortunately. There are often times when we have to make some last-minute calls and scramble and find people who can deliver food for us, but people always come through, and that's the great thing about this community. There's times when we have, there's years when we've had nearly 200 residents calling, requesting food pantry deliveries. So we're so grateful to Loaves and Fishes for this community collaboration and helping us fight food insecurity. So I have here with me Assistant Director Amy DeMichael, Outreach Coordinator Alicia Rago, van drivers Neil Campbell and Rich Kent, who both have over 20 years of service to the town as drivers, and some COA board members. And this was the plaque we received.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Liz, you want to do a picture?
Okay. Get everybody get a little closer. Don't be strangers now. Okay. All right. Okay. Very good. Thank you.
David, would you like a picture?
I think so.
This? In the Friends? Anyone from Friends want to come up?
Do a separate or?
We can do it.
Let's all do separate. Let's do it. Get everybody up here.
All right. Yeah, you belong in the middle. That's right. Okay, here we go.
I don't care.
Let's do this one.
It's hard.
Come on in. You guys
I need all that help.
Okay. You can lean on me.
Here, why don't you guys?
I can stretch and flex.
I get cut out of it. It's no big deal.
You can cross me out.
Yeah, maybe you can move it. Come on, we have room here. All right. All right. Good. All right. Good. All right.
This is great. I am pretending, you know.
Moving on, Park and Rec.
Awesome.
Hello, everybody. So this is just a simple requesting the 20B exemption. We have 3 individuals that will be, they work with the school, but they would like to help us for out-of-school, after-school time programs. And then there's one teacher who also would like to run an after-school program, so it's a little bit different, but still have to ask for the 20B exemption for all 4 of them. This is kind of a standard thing. We have done these individuals in the past, but as we're kind of understanding the recent interpretation from the solicitor is that we need to do this every time they kind of either do a new program or if they have left our payroll and are coming back on. So that's pretty much it.
So I just have one question. Along the lines of what you just said, the way it's worded, it says it's through sometime in 2025. So does that mean that through June of 2025? So that means if they're, if you want them to continue in July of 25, you're going to be back?
It is possible. because they will more than likely change roles. So again, I think we're still trying to determine the ins and outs and what we really need to do. But as we kind of understand it right now, if their role would change, then yes, we would have to do so.
It's easy enough to do.
Yeah, I just was asking as a
Yeah.
point of clarification for,
I don't think we've like solidified all the ins and outs and policy of it. So we're just making sure that, we dot the i's and cross the t's.
That's the legal stuff.
Yep.
20B. So,
any other questions?
move that the select board vote to acknowledge a disclosure by municipal employee of financial interest in a municipal contract and approve the exemption requests of Perry Kenny, Emily Bell, Megan Bell, and Catherine Honchell as a municipal employee in accordance with MGL Chapter 268 Alpha, Section 20B.
Second.
Moved by Gary, second by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great job over the weekend, too. Good. Good. It was fun.
DPW.
Good evening.
Hey, Steve.
First sign that winter's coming, right? If it wasn't this morning when it was 20, here I am for private street snow and ice removal. We sent applications out to the roads to qualify back in September. Received them all back the first week or so of October, did our inspections per the regulation over the last few weeks. Have reached out to anybody with any concerns. Really no concerns, just some kind of heads up, trim a branch, patch a hole type of thing. I did include an email, obviously the board knows, the one street that we've had some issues the last few years. Seems like some of those issues have been rectified. So hopefully we'll have no concerns this winter going forward. We've expressed those to the residents down there, so hopefully that goes smooth, but just ask for the board's acceptance and vote on what is now a somewhat standard list of private streets.
My street's still not on there, Steve.
Yeah, I don't see Wilson Way. Is that on purpose? Intentionally keeping Gary off?
Yeah, it'll never happen, unfortunately.
So I just had a couple, so this list is basically the same as the list from the year before? We haven't, no one, with the exception of Cricket Lane, potentially there's no additions or
No,
subtractions?
the regulation states it had to be in existence prior to 1990, so it's more or less the same list.
Crazy.
And in the email it said Cricket Lane has issues, but now those are all resolved
They seem
effectively?
to
so-
have figured them
okay.
out on their own. We went down, they've repaved quite a bit of the road, they have some no parking signage installed, so hopefully we've got that all cleared up.
Okay.
I know they say in the email that they filed the necessary paperwork with LPD.
They have.
And you
copies.
verified that already?
Yep,
Okay,
yep.
Great.
Just a quick question. I'm actually going to go back to Wilson Way or any other private ways that pop up that obviously since 1990. Is that a bylaw or is that a select board policy? Put you on the spot, Steve, sorry, but
No, I mean, it was voted to continue at, I'm gonna throw a dot at it
August
here.
2000.
2010, I think.
Yeah, it was a town meeting where it was actually voted, because a lot of the debate was public funds on private property. But,
Yeah, there was like 14 or 15, 2014 or 15, where there was a lot of
I
debate.
believe this
Actually, it
was
was
a-
even before that, because like Ted was on the board.
I don't have it. I believe it's a board regulation.
I just don't know what the process would be.
I've tried, it's not
No?
under our current, no. I mean, it's one of those things that the previous streets that were private get, I'm not gonna, but thank you for bringing it up.
All I can think of is chapter
I know there's a
40.
lot of private roads that have come on board since, but we can't, they'll never be plowed by the town under the current regulations.
I just think that there's variances in place under chapter 40, which is the zoning bylaws and or zoning Mass General Law, Chapter 40. And there's ways to do, like, if there were 3 contiguous homes, and you didn't meet a certain lot requirement or something like that, 2 contiguous homes in the neighborhood, and you wanted to do what those other homes did, you're able to do it under Mass General Law, Chapter 40. It's a loose parallel, but I would have to think there's some way to be able to do it.
I would note the motion does mention that August 28, 2000 policy on plowing and sanding a private way, so it maybe was a policy at that time. But there may have been a follow-up vote at town meeting as well.
It could have been a select board member had a private road on that date and wanted to have its road plowed. That's why I'm staying on it.
Well, I'm just bringing up yours. Just
No, thank you.
know.
I've researched it because you brought me up when I sat down with you. You brought me up to speed on why, when this exact thing happened. So it gave me a clear understanding. I was able to talk to all of the neighbors on my street on why we cannot have that done. So.
But Matthew can.
I know.
Steve, are there many streets that ask for this permission and you can't give it to them because of this policy?
I think in the last few years, a couple have asked. Having lived on a private way in town for 20-plus years myself that just missed the cutoff by a few years. And a former board member lives on the street. Still lives on the street.
Brandy wine.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of the newer ones have come in and just asked the question. I just kind of refer to the policy and say that's what it is. So.
Okay.
I guess the second, if I may, if this is never going to change, right? What are you coming to us for every year? If it's never going to change.
Standards. You have to meet his standards.
Right, so that.
Right?
Basically we
We
go out and
invest
inspect.
our approval subject to his approval.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Instead of having to come in front of us, if it's the same streets and they will never change, is there a way that we can either have the town administrator sign off on this? In other words, unless something changes, you all of a sudden had to make a decision, and there was a combative situation where.
I think, if I may, I think that's part of what the Crooked Lane matter had kind of come before you. So really kind of giving you that option. Also understanding that if there is a road that Steve makes that recommendation to you on it, ultimately you're aware of it and providing that opinion.
Sure, ruling on that. But I'm just saying on a typical year where there's nothing that changes, everything's good to go, do we have to meet and vote on this every year?
It's your policy.
It's something we probably should research.
Okay, all right, just
Not that we don't love to see you, but.
It's almost like a rubber stamp if there's no changes.
No,
so
absolutely,
it's things like
absolutely.
that.
Any other debate?
No, thank you. Okay. Move that the select board vote pursuant to its August 28th, 2000 policy on plowing, sanding private ways to approve the list of roads as recommended by the Highway Department report dated October 30th, 2024 as follows. Approved without further conditions, Barron Way, Countryside Road, Cricket Lane, Great Road, 504 to 512, Green Needles Road, Neshoba Woodland section, Green Needles Road, back half, Hiddenwood Path, Oak Ridge Road, Omega Way, Robin Wood Road, Rock Place, Silver Birch Lane, Star Hill, Whispering Pine Drive, and Whitcomb Avenue.
Second.
Moved by Gary, second by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Sneak in close.
Treasurer collector.
This is the fun stuff.
Oh, yeah. Good evening. So on October 22nd, we had our S&P rating results for a AAA bond rating for our long-term bonds and S&P 1 Plus for short-term borrowing, which reflects an outlook that the town maintains its strong financial performance, including very strong general fund available reserves. Tonight we have we have a band sale that you need to sign for and the general obligation bond. The band sale is for a roll of $5 million for the senior center that we borrowed for, and then an additional $8.5 million to finish out the borrowing. That came in at 3.07, I'm not gonna go through all the numbers, but 3.07 net interest costs. The bond for $12,750,000 is for 3.44. We got 10 bids for the bond, and they were all pretty close, and 6 bids for the ban. The bond includes the sewer ban, the water mains, Indian Hill, so 36 King, and Whitcomb Water and PFAS, so it's a big bond.
It's a heck of a rate, too.
Yeah, the rates were great.
Yeah, considering that was expected.
Yeah, because we budgeted at 6, so,
Yeah, that's,
we were quite happy with the results.
That's fantastic.
So I apologize for all the papers, but you have lots to sign.
Roughly about 20 or so signatures here that were required to ask of you. Once.
I started putting stickies on and I gave up. I'm like, there's too
I mean,
was just gonna
it's,
ask
you know,
if
you
I-
budgeted for 6, it'd be interesting to see what the savings actually is.
Yeah, I was
It's
curious
probably
about that.
in millions of what,
Over the term, yeah.
over the term of the loans, I mean.
Yeah.
So that's good news. So,
Yes.
well, any questions?
I just want to know why the motion is so short
I
for
knew you
reading.
were gonna say
Because I had to read things that were like 5 pages long, and this is like
So we
one
asked and they
sentence.
said you can just vote that, so I apologize to you because you had to read them all. Gary, you're welcome.
That's probably why he didn't
We
show
did
up today.
follow
He
up
thought it was
on
going to be a long motion.
So,
Matthew saw the agenda.
so the
I'm not reading.
numbers that you just said are slightly different than what was in the packet, like the ban said 13.5
So the band, we
million.
use this year we use the premium from the band that we usually get, and we save that usually for next year interest. We budgeted all of our costs this year for doing the bond, so we used it to pay down the principal.
Okay,
So that's why it's less.
okay. Any other questions, comments?
Which is why we have such a good bond rating.
Okay,
Move that the select board adopt the vote prepared by bond council in connection with the sale of the town's November 2024 bonds and bond anticipation notes.
Second.
moved by Gary, second by Karen, all those in favor?
Aye.
It's the same motion, so that should be fine. So we'll pass this along. Again, it's for Robin, it's going to be about 20 or so pages for you to sign, so each of you, our apologies. It's, that part they didn't forgive us on,
No, thank you.
unfortunately. So
Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Is this going to be a roll call for classification opening a hearing?
It probably should be. Yeah. So this opens the, if it's 7.
So we're going to have the fiscal year 25 tax classification, public info session and vote. And you have to read the hearing notice.
I don't know if we have the hearing notice, but you can at least move to open the hearing.
I'll read the hearing. It's not that long.
Okay, if you have it.
Property tax classification hearing. It's the legal notice. The Littleton Select Board will conduct a public hearing under Massachusetts General Laws 40, Section 56, on Monday, November 4th, 2024, at 7 p.m. in the Sturts Room, Reuben Hoare Library, 35 Shattuck Street, Littleton, Massachusetts, on the issue of allocating the local property tax levy among the 5 property classes: residential, open space, commercial, industrial, and personal. The public hearing can be viewed live on Littleton Cable Television or online. Gives the iCloud address. All interested persons and/or parties wishing to be heard will be afforded an opportunity to be heard at the November 4th, 2024 property tax classification hearing. Mark Rambacher, Select Board Chair. The motion is as follows. Move that the Select Board vote to open the hearing for FY25 tax classification public information session and vote.
Second.
Moved by Gary, second by Karen. It's a roll call vote. Chuck?
I'm in favor.
Karen?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So the hearing is open.
Do you have anything for us to sign? Starting to cramp.
Sure.
So good evening, Kathy Miller, and I put together a slide presentation to help you in adopting the residential factor, which shifts a portion of the residential burden to the commercial, industrial, and personal properties. The 3 components of tonight's tax classification hearing are to adopt the residential factor, to vote to adopt or not to adopt a residential exemption, and to vote to adopt or not adopt a small commercial exemption. For the main purpose of the hearing, the Select Board will be tasked with determining a residential factor which will determine the percentage share of the tax burden to be allocated to each class of property. And the 5 classes of property are residential, open space, commercial, industrial, and personal property. These are some commonly used terms that you'll hear throughout the presentation. New growth, that's addition to the tax base from new construction and property improvements. It allows the levy to be increased to cover additional services resulting from new construction. And levy is the revenue raised through property taxes. The levy limit is the maximum dollar amount a town can raise in a fiscal year. It's the prior year's levy plus 2.5%, plus new growth, plus debt exclusions. Excess levy capacity is difference between the levy and the levy limit. Debt exclusion is a temporary increase to the levy to pay for capital projects as voted. CIP refers to the class of property that is commercial, industrial, personal property. And then the minimum residential factor is the factor that represents the minimum percentage that the residential class must pay. So this is the fiscal year 25 levy breakdown, and it has the prior year's levy limit, which is $48,883,135. We added to it the 2.5%, the new growth, debt exclusion, and the result is the total tax levy of $52,271,592. Excluded debt will be paid down by $349,879 from the DE stabilization fund, and total excluded debt would have been $900,000. This payment will reduce the single tax rate by 15 cents per thousand.
Just for clarity, that 900,000 is after the 349 was subtracted then? Or,
Do you have? Yes.
So it
Okay.
would have been 1.2-ish, but now it's 900.
okay,
Correct.
okay.
Is that right, or is it the 900? It would have been 900,000, but instead it's 349,879.
349 is what's being contributed from the stabilization account.
And okay,
to go towards the debt.
okay.
I'm sorry, that doesn't clear it up for me.
So,
I'll say it. I'm looking. I
so
don't
it
think
was
I'm the only
either,
one.
so if the 900, it was either supposed to be 1.2 or it should be 550, and you're saying it should have been 1.25 if we didn't have the debt
It's
stabilization.
$900,000 on top of the levy. You don't count the 349 on top of the levy. You're paying it outside.
All right. But I think it was the 1.2 million. We've reduced that amount by the
Using our
roughly 350.
stabilization fund.
Correct,
Okay.
correct.
That's kind of-
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I think
Okay.
that's your question.
Yeah, thank you.
The use of the debt exclusion stabilization account beginning in fiscal year 17 through fiscal year 25 has shifted a total of $2,644,249 of excluded debt to inside the levy limit. So normally on this screen, I usually have a chart and I put my projections for new growth for fiscal year 26 and 27. There were so many variables this year that I decided to put up the upcoming projects because I have yet to sit with the town planner and the building commissioner to figure out what the impact in dollar amounts will be for fiscal year 26 and 27. So the importance of this slide is you can see what we have going on. We have Northern Bank with some commercial industrial, and then 550 King is going to be mixed, but we're always keeping in mind that residential seems to be growing faster than CI in town. So I wanted to put the biggest projects up here. And as soon as I get that impact and get a dollar value, I'll forward that along to Ryan and he can send it to everybody. Fiscal year 25 is an interim year. The increase in overall total property of 4.7%. New growth value increased 79%. And with the Municipal Modernization Act, revaluations have changed from every 3 years to every 5 years. And next year will be a certification for Littleton. And this year, I don't have it on the slide, but our new growth value was 1.2 million, which was exciting because we only forecasted approximately 650,000. For next year's certification, just stepping back to that other slide real quick, next year's certification, I just wanted to say that we,
I'm sorry, which one do you want me to go to?
the interim year,
Oh, the interim.
this,
This one.
yeah, I just wanted to state that we have received money from town meeting. I requested an additional $25,000 so that we can have residential, commercial, industrial, and personal property be contracted out. I just thought it would be best. Normally, we do residential in-house, but it's kind of a nice checking point to have professionals look at it and double-check my work at least once every 5 years. So this is the 2025, fiscal year 25 property values by class, and this is the pie, and it shows the total values. We have approximately 3.1 billion in total value, and as you can see from the pie graph, that residential takes the biggest portion of the pie with 77.78%, and CIP having the 22.22%. This just is almost the same as before. It kind of just shows it in graphs so you can see them all individual, the residential, commercial, industrial, and personal property over 10 years, so you can see the graph and how we've been increasing over the past 10 years.
Is the increase, I mean, if the slope of the residential is greater than the slope of the commercial, is that because of the number of residential units or because the residential are increasing faster?
So it's a combination of both. We've had a lot of strong permits in Littleton, and we've seen a lot of growth. They've started kind of leveling off this year, I'd say, for permits for new construction. But previously, they were really strong, as you can see. But also, you can, as we all know, that the values and the sales are just so strong, and that contributes to a big portion of the residential pie piece getting bigger and bigger every year. So this is the tax levy. And again, it's the same percentage because the percentage of the total value is the percentage of the levy that it takes up, with residential 77.78 and the commercial industrial 22.22%. The total tax levy was the $52,271,000. So splitting the tax rate, a portion of the single rate residential levy is shifted to the CIP single rate levy. The amount of the shift is voted by the select board, and except in uncommon circumstances, the shift cannot add more than 50% of the existing single rate CIP levy. For example, if the existing CIP was 10 million, the maximum shift allowed would be 5, for a total CIP of 15 million. So this graph shows an example using last year's values. And the levy for last year for fiscal year 24 was $49,780,000. And in this case, you can see how that's broken up. And the piece in the gray is the portion of the residential that would be shifted to the CIP. So at the bottom in the blue, we have 70.23. Before the shift, it was residential had 78.61% of the total value and of the levy, and it shifted over to the orange, which is the CIP 2139, which makes it a total value of 29.77 after the shift for CIP. And this is the same as, but now the orange has combined the shift, and it's showing you the new shift. Instead of being 78.61% residential, they now have 70.23% of the burden, and CIP took on additional burden, and they're now 29.77. This graph is the average single-family home assessment. For fiscal year 25, the average single-family value is $694,868. This is an increase of 3.9%, or 22,762 over last year's. You can see that last year's values were 672,106 for the average home.
That's crazy.
What I found interesting is at the bottom, if you look over the past 5 years, the average single-family home has increased 229,000, or 49.31%. So to see that in 5 years, I thought was pretty shocking. And I wanted to double check how much we increased over the past couple of years. It was really interesting, but we increased 3.39% this year. In fiscal year '24, we increased 13.14%. And then in fiscal year '23, it was 14.63%. So it's kind of interesting how our increase has like really significantly slowed down as the prices have skyrocketed and the interest rate has making buying new homes not affordable anymore. So the commercial property values increased in fiscal year '25 of 16.20%, or $98,100. The average business, well, I should say the median business for fiscal year '24 was $605,000, and this year it's $703,000. So this chart is just comparing us to surrounding communities to see where we stand as far as our values. Littleton's value, as you know, is $672,106. The median was $683,520. And we've maintained being slightly below that average. And this is the average single-family tax bill compared to surrounding communities. Littleton is 9th at $9,974, and the median was $10,196. This chart just reviews the historical residential shift and what you guys have voted in over the past 10 years. After you vote a residential factor, we'll be taking a vote for the residential exemption. And the residential exemption is applied to every residential property which is the principal residence of the taxpayer. The exemption is subtracted from the assessed value of the eligible parcels. The exclusions are accessory residential land and seasonal homes. Generally, we do not vote this in. This is voted in more in communities that have large amounts of vacation properties and apartment buildings. Small commercial exemption is just designed to provide tax relief to small businesses. The tax burden is shifted within the CI class. And the qualifying criteria is eligible properties must be included in the annual, it's a list provided to the assessors from the Department of Labor and Workforce Development. And the qualifying properties must have a valuation of less than $1 million and an average annual employment of 10 or few people. And then Ryan is going to put on the 5. We gave 5 options, and if you have any questions.
These same 5 options should be on page 5 of the handout. So this is the third component that you're asking the board to vote on, which is the tax shift.
The tax shift, yes.
You want to talk at all about what they have in front of them for the 5 options?
So how did you come up with these 5 options?
So when you run it through, so Gateway has this calculation that you can put them in, and you can get up to like 200 different variations. And we kind of go through and pick the ones that make the most sense. I mean, you can't shift past 1.5, so we didn't give many options going towards the maximum shift.
So last year at 139, so we brought it down a little bit, but not anything that has a big impact.
Last year, we voted 139.
Yeah.
So we're not suggesting to keep the same factor. There's not one that's keeping the same.
So the last residential factor is essentially the equivalent of the prior year.
But it's a lower number because the residentials didn't increase as much as the commercial in your present.
It's just the way the numbers work and.
With the values.
With the values increasing, the shift goes a little bit.
Because the values of the commercial increased more than the shift number came down?
I think it's the residential shift.
Well, but Kathy said that the residentials increased 3% and the commercial increased 13%.
Yeah,
So-
but it's the levy limit that we're looking at, not the sale prices. So it's two different things.
Okay.
So I think are you referring to, so when I did the increases, it's residential over last year and commercial over last year.
Yep.
But keep in mind, the portion of residential, so you have to have the same percent, is much larger. So residential is still increasing.
Yeah.
After the
pie.
CIP.
The pie is growing.
I could get if you want, I can send you the exact increase.
Okay, so what you're saying then is if residential is going up 3%, and let's just say commercial is going up 3%, then we'd have to keep lowering the factor to keep them at the same.
But it's not apples to
Because-
apples. Because commercial is nowhere near the
No,
amount.
no,
of
no,
money.
but she's saying that the residential value is increasing so much more that it makes
It
the,
still is.
so.
Yeah.
In looking out, and that's why I put the projects that are coming up, because even with 550 King, it seems like more, and I don't know the exact portion, but it looks like the majority of 550 King will be residential in comparison to the amount of CIP that's going in that spot.
At least initially, at least over the next foreseeable future.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I wanted time to look at the impact, because I really have to look at what that percentage is going to be so I can start estimating what 26 and 27 values and new growth is going to look like.
I had a question on, so a couple slides back, you had talked about you had mentioned that it's more so used when in areas where there's a lot more apartment
The
buildings.
exemptions?
Yeah.
Seasonal,
The residential
Residential,
exemption,
yeah.
yeah.
So we know,
Or vacation
we know
homes.
there's some significant apartment buildings coming, probably not this year, definitely not this year, but at what level does that make sense? I mean, I'm trying to figure out why you would ever give that exemption. Or,
I'd have to look into that. That's a great question, actually. I don't know what percentage the apartment buildings and vacation homes. I know that there's only 18 communities that have adopted it, and most of them are at the Cape, Martha's Vineyard,
yeah.
and such.
Okay, so it's, all right. I was just curious, like, towns like Acton, which went real heavy on apartments.
I don't know anybody, I don't
It's more like
know,
Boston. Like,
Okay, all
Yeah.
right, so
yeah,
this is
I don't know
Cambridge.
any communities.
It doesn't make a lot of sense for our community then.
I can't imagine
Maybe I'm
even with
speaking
550.
online, but we don't have a whole lot of vacation homes here, like you'd mentioned.
Right.
And I'm just trying to see where it would make sense ever.
I'll look into that, though. It's worth looking into.
Yeah.
I just don't know the answer right now. And how much apartments would have to have, because we have very little vacation properties.
Right.
And I'm not even sure, too, as an apartment, whether or not that would be applicable here. So if you think about this as maybe, we talked about the Cape as a potential alternative. So if you had a second home on Cape Cod, say, for example, in that instance, you'd be essentially giving the residential exemption to someone who actually lived in the community versus, say, someone who's got a second home. So you're basically, it's a shift over to those second.
Yes, within the residential class. So you'd be shifting some of the burden of the residential homeowners to the vacation properties
vacation
and the
property.
apartment building owners.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
So all of your numbers are fairly close together, right? If we picked one, let's just say we picked option 5, that, if we pick one, we could pick option 4 or option 5. Option 4 lowers the tax on the residential. Actually, both of them do, I guess, right? They both, so option
So
5
they both
lowers the
increase
tax on the residential, and increases the commercial. Are we then closer to whatever limit we're trying not to make sure we don't hit, or?
So if you can look in the column, the CIP, where it's 1.37.
1.45, is that the number?
1.5 is
Oh, 1.5.
is the max.
Yeah, we're way.
which would float closer to if we did the exemption.
Yeah. Has that ever changed? The 1.5, is that pretty much?
So there are situations where you can go above the 1.5, but it all has to do with when, in Gateway, when you enter the numbers, the system will actually tell you if you're eligible.
Oh, I see.
And so far, I don't think we've ever been to go higher than 1.5.
And I believe, Kathy, though, that's what the city of Boston is looking to do currently. So trying to put a greater burden on the commercial side of things to provide relief on the residential side. So, but they needed special legislation to make that happen. Otherwise, it's,
Yeah, I did
it's
see
the
that one,
1.5
yes.
standard.
And as soon as
And
they
the
do-
businesses are all up in arms, I saw that.
Oh, yeah.
But as soon as they set that precedent, that you're gonna have all the other, like Chelsea, Watertown, Waltham, all the other communities
sure.
that have Everett, that have,
A heavy commercial base.
well, the heavy commercial base, but also a lot of, they have the exemptions available, so all the
Yeah.
apartments they have.
What did we do last year? Just to remind us.
1.39.
One point, we did do 1.39.
That's option number 2.
Well, she says it's, I know option 2 says 1.3729, but it's the difference in the valuation.
shift,
It's not,
yeah.
it's not keeping a constant shift, it's keeping a constant proportion of the shift. So if we kept a constant shift, it would be,
Option 5.
it'd be closer, a little past option 5, right?
Yeah, so if we just chose 1.39 and not knowing exactly what the changes would be, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
It's like we're playing a never-ending game of catch-up, no matter how much we reduce these on the residential side. The valuation's going up so fast, we don't even, the resident
Shoveling-
doesn't even
shoveling.
realize it because it's like, our taxes keep going up, well, you
Shoveling
can't
against the
catch it.
side, yeah.
It's a never-ending, chasing your tail, basically. So,
All the options all the options outlined here are very, except option 1, which I assume we're not at all interested in. Yeah, yeah. All the other options, the numbers are fairly close together for the
Marginal,
residential.
yeah.
It's a cup of coffee, not substantial change.
So if we were to go to 5, for instance, versus 2, it's gonna be $42. Well, actually, I wrote that in there, thank you, I was doing math. But it would increase by $156 on the, by
So-
the commercial.
So one question then on option 5 is, since we're at 1.39 this year, if we actually went to option 5, it's 1.385. We're not any closer to the cap in 25 than we were in 24. Is that correct? So,
That is correct.
because I know last year, Mr. Venuti gave us all kinds of warnings about not getting too close to the cap and trying to keep the number down, but even if we were to go to option 5, we're still lowering, effectively, we're lowering the percentage anyway. So it's,
But if we go with option 2, we've got, I'm gonna get those 2 zeros there, which I don't know how many people are paying attention to it, but
yeah.
So option 2, when you say 0, 0,
oh, I'm sorry, yeah, that's just
That's
versus
it.
Yeah.
versus itself.
Yeah.
never mind.
That's the baseline, right? Okay.
So then actually, it's going up 366 and 1290.
So in option 2, you're going up 360. So, okay. Do we
But we're
have,
giving ourselves more room in the future.
Correct.
And I think it's marginal. I don't think any one of these is going to be terribly impactful to either party.
And not in the current climate, no.
Well, I mean, I was on the phone for 45 minutes with my car insurance company. Because it went up by like, I don't even want to say it. So, yeah, a few dollars on the margin do matter. So, no more Bubba Burgers, we gotta go with the store brand.
Are there any comments from the public?
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to know with regards to resident bailing out companies like the IBM. Of course, the IBM moved out. We picked up a additional amount of money that we had to pay to make up what the town was entitled to collect for that property up there. And I guess, thank God, I guess we only had one company there, and that's IBM. My question is surrounding the fact that we don't show in the taxes that we send out to the people how much they're paying each year until the town get that property evaluated back up where it can collect what it's collecting. I think at one point it was $600,000 that the town was collecting, which the taxpayer is making it up because the town's entitled to collect that money. But we don't show it in the taxes as that item is a category that's in the town where a resident has to make up the money for the town. And I think it should be showing exactly what it is that we're picking up and to show projected, I don't know when that property is going to move back up to the 60 million or whatever it was up there for collection of that amount of money on there. So I think that we should be entitled to know what we're paying. So when the taxes come in, it says you're paying this, but there's additional that is put in there that we're paying that a lot of people don't realize that they're paying for IBM property up there until the town gets back and that property keeps the valuation back up. So I would like to know what is it that we're projected to pay this year in the tax levy with regards to this.
Yeah, so this is like when you see a large business, like in Detroit, when Ford moved out of Detroit, it literally collapsed the economy of that.
Wang did to Lowell.
Yes, in Wang and Lowell. So
Right.
it took years to recover from that. And obviously IBM wasn't to that. We have a much more broad tax base across, but I think if you guys can speak to that, I mean, we lost, what, $30 million? Is that?
What's the assessed value?
What's our two assessed values of that building, where it sits today versus when it was full? Because that's the...
At its highest, it was, I believe, 65 million.
Yeah, that's what...
And I believe, and I didn't bring that information with me tonight, but I believe we're at like 32 million.
Yeah. And that would be expected. We're
And you just
expecting...
multiply that by the commercial rate per 1,000, right?
Yep. And it's a weird...
That's, we get the rate for...
The science is weird, the math behind it is weird because we expect a lot more than 65 billion. At the end of the day, what's going in there is going to be valued at a lot more than 65 million. We're talking, get rid of 100 million, I mean, so...
So can you speak a little bit to how, as they fill out the IBM building versus building the apartments, what that does for the taxes?
So as IBM fills that building up, it's not going to give us any new growth because the building's already there. It's already new. It's not new construction. But I will be reducing some of the vacancy that's in there, and I'll bring it back up to, I mean, it's going to be incrementally because from what I understand, the new tenant is only taking up 1.5 floors of one building.
So
it's going to be
90,000 square feet, 75,000.
Yeah, so it's going to be slow going before you're going to see that. But what it does essentially is the pie that we had seen, and you see such a big portion of the residential in that small 22.22% of the CIP you'll see that CIP get a little larger, and so when you shift, you can shift a little bit more, and that affects the 1.5 maximum, so you'll be able to shift a little bit more. The hard part of shifting is when the residential piece is getting bigger and bigger. And so that, it's just going to, and that's gonna be time, like I said, the last I heard, and I don't know as much as you guys, but the last I heard, they were only taking 1.5 floors of one building.
The initial company that's moving in.
Right.
75,000 square.
But
And so it could be several years, but yes.
any new buildings that are constructed don't count as new growth, not as getting back to the old floor. Is that correct?
Right.
So,
And I think we're going to have, I believe we have the Poli companies coming in soon, correct? To
Friday.
talk about the Friday.
Last Friday.
Last Friday, they talked to
Oh,
Karen.
but that didn't get, what I'm saying is that didn't talk about we have a timeline for, he can't predict a timeline for IBM, the buildings. They're waiting on leases, but the construction timeline for new growth we have, well.
Sewer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So we basically can say that we can count on existing structure for this year of tax rounds of classification. In other words, when you go in there, nothing's really changed besides 75,000 square feet of a 500,000 square foot.
Yeah, and like I said, it's going to take more than just IBM to allow us to start shifting back into the ways that we shifted previously.
Which will be all new growth.
Previously, we had so much commercial, we had, IBM was here, it was a large piece of pie, we had, just Distribution Drive was new, but right now, the residential is just so strong, and even with the new projects, they just seem like they're going to be stronger. So even as IBM starts occupying some of that building, this piece of the pie is still growing just as fast.
I know when I came on the board, we were talking, well, let's get that commercial growth up to 30%. I mean, somehow get this economic growth to 30, and it's just tough. I mean, we're still seeing buildings at the point that, not that that's going to be new growth now,
Right.
but these unfilled.
It's the industrial component. It's getting the industrial, that's what's growing.
Yeah,
The
on
storage, the
Foster
warehouses, the distribution centers, the self-storage,
And they're empty buildings.
It's some of those, like, a big part of my new growth, we were lucky we got 2 Monarch Drive this year. So when you look at I didn't include that in my estimation. I didn't know when it was going to be done, and I had projected it for later, and we got it earlier than I thought. But that played a big part.
so I'm going to iterate what I think you're saying on the 550 is that if they're building 70% residential and 30% commercial, you're not going to change anything because you're still.
Yeah, that's right. I don't see, based on what we have in the pike for new construction, and you'd have to occupy a lot more than one floor for you to see any kind of ability to shift more.
I'm not saying that
Yeah,
part.
but
I'm saying
relative
as
to
they
the new
build
growth.
out new buildings, if it's 70% residential and 30%, you're expecting that the pieces of the pie on the property values between commercial and residential will roughly stay the same as they build out 550. That's different than reoccupying the existing building.
Yes.
So Kathy, wouldn't you say that so we're at 22% of commercial and 78% of residential, to start and shift that, every percentage point, I want to say, is it 50 million of a commercial industrial investment in order to start shifting that percentage for it to go to 23%.
Right.
And I think it's in the tens of millions. I know that, and just sitting here quickly and off the top of my head, I thought it was like something like close to $50 million to start to shift that. So when you talk about you'd like to go from 22% to 30%,
you're right.
I mean,
it's a hard lesson learned for me. I mean, since we've been on the board, and I almost want to think since you've been on the board, we've shifted this a little bit every year, right?
In both directions.
We have gone the other
Yes.
way? Okay.
Yeah.
Since we've been on the board, I've only seen it go the other way.
You can see the shift on that historical.
The historical shift.
Oh, yeah.
Just if I can kind of follow up on
Alan?
Nope.
No.
Next one. Next one.
Wait, maybe I want to.
Right there.
Yeah, there we go. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, right there.
That's your history of your shift right there.
Okay.
16.
So yeah, we were going the other way, all the way up to FY
16,
18.
17, 18 went down.
All the way.
And then
I don't know what the logic
20
was.
back down.
What was the logic behind that? Do you remember? What was being presented?
Well, you had the point factored in to some extent.
That would have definitely been the point.
There was a fair amount of new construction with like Cooper Farm being built on Wickham Ave. I don't remember the name of those, that development between Oak Hill and Wickham Ave, Edwards.
Oh, right.
Edwards Drive. So, I mean, this,
And we've been pretty aggressive with it since, almost as aggressive as we can be since FY 19.
So I know you can't put up two slides at the same time, but the option 2 that you presented keeps this at 10.66%. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
So if we went to option 4, it would be more like 10.7% or 10.8% or something like that, right? Because what I'm asking, like, the numbers you showed on option 2, the CIP factor is 1.37, which is almost a historical low from this, for us, right? So I'm wondering why we're going low rather than staying more towards our historical average. Is
At 1.40.
Yeah, I mean,
just to get back to Gary's question on it real quickly, just looking at that historical slide again, we were getting concerned about creeping. So there was a very specific
Yeah, so it was a
intention
concerted
to-
effort to go the
Yes,
other way.
Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, even if we picked the most aggressive option on there, we're
Oh,
still a
I'm not-
lower number.
That was,
Yeah.
Yeah.
literally, yeah, I agree with
That's
that.
what, yeah, that was my question.
If I may, so the types of the apartment buildings that are gonna be built at 550 King Street in the real estate world are considered commercial properties. But as far as we're concerned, they're
No,
taxed at residential.
apartment buildings
Yes.
still are
Okay.
residential class.
Right.
So that,
Well, in the commercial world, if you try to get a loan for anything more than three.
because you're doing the
three
cap rate and
units,
you're looking at the
it's
income
commercial
approach,
loans.
it makes you
Absolutely.
feel
Right,
like,
yeah.
But no, they're,
You have a three-family house, you can get a loan from Joe the mortgage guy. If you have a four-family house, you have to get a commercial loan.
yeah, a lot of people think that, especially because most of the time valuation is done by the income approach, which is, used for commercial industrial properties. But they are class 112 and a 111, which is residential.
Yeah.
So that's still blowing up that portion.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm personally feeling 4 or 5 right now. That's me. But I put an arrow next to 4, but I'm.
Well, again, it's pretty.
Mr. Sanders?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't hear the answer to, George Sanders, 672 Group. I didn't hear the answer to the question that I asked. How much are the taxpayers going to be paying on the money that the town is entitled to collect for 550 up there? Now,
30 million.
I remember a couple of years ago, it was, I believe it was $130 that we was paying. So I'm just wondering, do we know what that figure is?
So
That was for the redistribution, $130, because we lost that tax revenue.
Right,
And it had to
right.
get spread out across the residential.
Right, it got
So
spread out.
it's literally the assessed value divided by 1,000 times the commercial rate. So if it was assessed at $65 million before Lapoli bought it, or when IBM left, it was $1.4 million in tax revenue. At $32 million, it's $704,000.
So it's about 700,000 that we had to make up for across all taxpayers in the community.
Yeah, I realize that, but that could
It
shift,
was actually
couldn't
lower
it?
than that, 'cause it was assessed lower than that.
Couldn't that shift?
that's the
Each year?
current numbers.
Yeah.
What we're saying, right? It was worth 65, it's now worth 32, so the difference is roughly.
Just like our homes are going up in value, so are these properties. So it's a very slight shift, but there is a shift happening back onto 550. for the developer at 550 is, the more developing that happens there, the assessed
Yeah, I
value is
know,
gonna
the
go
more
up.
that it does, yeah, you get a little bit more, but it doesn't bring it up to where we're not bailing them out over there with, well, the town, we're not bailing the town out over there. So as it stands right now, whatever that number is, that I'm saying that, what is the number? I mean, the spread was 130, say, 2 years ago. What is they projecting going to be this year?
It's probably still about the same.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yes,
It-
they haven't occupied yet. They have to occupy
Yeah, it's
yet.
about the same, roughly.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Which isn't great news.
No, but I have to
Can't-
say, we're fortunate in Littleton that we have 22% commercial. Some of the surrounding towns, I think we have to keep in mind, the Grottons, the Westfords, they don't have enough. They're not splitting the tax rate. So sometimes commercial industrial is going to plummet and it's going to have to be spread. And there's other times when it was strong and we shifted heavily and there was some tax savings. I'm just pointing that out.
Are there any other comments from the public?
Close the hearing.
Are we done? Do we have a,
For public, I guess.
Yeah, close the hearing.
Just as long as it's no more.
We can close the hearing and still have deliberation up here.
Yeah. All right, so, that's not a whole lot, I can just.
Motion to close the hearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Motion to close the public hearing.
Second?
motion to close the public hearing, second by Karen?
Gary's
roll-
aye.
Chuck?
Chuck's aye.
Karen's aye.
And I'm an aye, so the hearing's closed. So now we have to decide
Yeah.
what number we want, or make Kathy come back next week.
It helps you to, the sooner we get this voted on, the better, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. I know your answer.
Right, because we have to set the tax rate and then
Yeah.
get the bills out, so. right.
And then the second thing was, just, it was going back a few slides, but when we have, we pay the 25,000 this year to have the contracted assessor come out. What's the timeline on that? Do we set a timeline when they have to be done? What's your own timeline to have that done? All those.
So next year's a reval, it's a certification year. And so the criteria, it's so much more stringent than anything you guys
Yeah.
are seeing here. They do quartiles, they do residuals on land curves. So the reason why I went to town meeting is so we can start early.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that now that we have a full calendar, as of December 31st, we'll have a full calendar year of sales from 2024. So I'm kind of hoping that as soon as, so January typically is abatement season. And so you have to get through a little bit of abatement season. But I'm hoping to start like by February, March.
And do you have any expectations on what that's going to look like to this, when we're looking at this next year?
So, I mean, I have outlooked a little bit. I mean, residential is stronger. Outside of 2 Monarch Drive, I couldn't think of any commercial industrial because it would have to be done by January 1st. So my assessment date is January 1st.
Okay.
And so this year, there really wasn't anything, but there was quite a few. I've got Hager Homesteads next door, and I already got 7 units over there. We didn't get any of the front units at all for this year. All my new growth was, my new growth was the 7 ones that are Hager Homestead, but the 336 King Street that's up front, all of those will be new growth for next year. And there's a few more miscellaneous houses that I saw on the horizon, so, but I didn't see
Yeah.
anything for January 1st. Yeah.
I'm just going to throw this out there, just to kind of follow up on Mr. Sanders' comment about the IBM property. We also had to absorb the whole strip where Northern Bank of Trust is developing. So those commercial properties went away as well. Nowhere near the same significance, but there was some other commercial industrial that came off as well. So instead of new growth, we actually went the other way.
How does the sewer project affect the assessments on the houses?
Affects the value.
That
So
won't be
what do you mean by
realized.
that?
If my house now has sewer, does that increase
Yes.
my
Assessed
Assessed
value.
value.
assessed value?
So that's one of the things that having Patriot come in to help me with residentials. I want to see, I talked to a couple other assessors at school this summer, and it's funny. Some feel like you see that affects positively the sale price in the market, and some said they didn't notice like a big difference in the sales market. Because the hard part is, right, we're all sales. I need like a year or two worth of sales to actually know for a fact what it's going to do in Littleton. I don't have those
I mean,
yet. So
common sense would tell you that you run a sewer line in front of that IBM property, that property value without anything in it goes up to me. Right?
So, yeah, I'm thinking that commercial industrial, yes, but I just don't know,
Not the
like, if you're
residential.
talking about the single families, that's what I don't know.
So if we're reassessing the commercial, that we could see the ones on the sewer line jump substantially.
Northern
potentially.
Trust, and,
Yeah.
Donlands, all those should.
Okay.
But even the vacant property, right, once LaPolla
'Cause they
gets
can-
that
yeah.
center line done, it's all worth more.
They can do more with it.
Yeah.
You know,
That's right.
we don't have to have another bank.
So do we want to talk more? You said you were leaning towards option 4 or 5?
Yeah, that was just when I'm looking at this, it's not as aggressive as last year. We're staring at something that, what's our growth this year for commercial? I mean, I could see the following year,
Right.
we can really get, now, my goodness, but right now.
It's minimal at best.
But in residential, we know what's going and we can see it where they're building, but it's not a lot either right now, so.
I think to your point about option 4, it's kind of like the least impact to everybody based upon what's presented. I mean, we can certainly make the argument that if we went with option 5 or deeper, then there'd be some more relief to the residential, but I think that's, option 4 is pretty fair.
I'm with option 4 or 5. I'm fine with either of those two. I mean, it's, the difference for the residents is fairly trivial between the two of them, right?
Right.
I mean,
$14 delta.
I mean, option 4 almost gets lost in the weeds compared to option 2, right? $14 and $54 is almost no difference.
Yeah, and it all just gets buried anyway by property values going up. So.
Yeah, well, your amount's going up $352. You're not going to notice that it didn't go up $366, right?
Right.
They're all of your numbers make your taxes go up. It's just how much we're limiting they go up.
Yeah.
Do you have comments, Karen?
I mean, I'm fine with limiting to 4 or 5. I think those make the most sense. My inclination is 4. I don't think we're quite out of the woods yet in terms of, needing room in the future. And so I'd rather have that ability. But I wouldn't want it to swing as far down as 3, for example.
So, Mr. Chair, to the motion, so if it were 4, then so the residential factor that you'd be establishing under 4 is 0.892256, right? Is that's what the motion would be there?
Yes.
But then you have the other two items, which we talked about, the residential exemption and the small commercial exemption, either yea or nay, both of which we had talked to you about. Kathy talked to you about. It's probably not as sensible a recommendation.
Have we ever adopted a small commercial exemption?
Not yet. We're just not there yet. I mean, I could see like a Danvers doing it or something where they have no space left in their commercial.
Well, it's encouraging small businesses, right? That's what you're, okay. So we're good with option 4?
I think so.
Plan.
Okay, move that the select board vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Section 56, relative to the fiscal year 2025 property tax to establish a residential factor of 0.892256 and not to adopt a residential exemption and not to adopt a small commercial exemption.
Second.
Moved by Gary, second by Karen. Does have to be a roll call? Or
Yes.
Gary's a yes.
Chuck?
Chuck's yes.
Karen?
Karen's a yes?
I'm in it, yes, so.
Thanks for all your work.
Thank
guys.
you.
Thank you.
I like how you presented this and didn't even give us the option to start going way up over the.
Very clever.
It was noted. Somehow I feel Venuti had a play in this, but I don't know.
So just before we get to public input, let's do the Nagog update. So Matthew and I have reached out to the potential lessee, and we are going to be talking to them tomorrow for the first time, so there'll be more updates after that. Ryan, is the work started by Classic on the?
I haven't talked to them today, but it should be this week.
Okay. And as per the lease agreement, we will not, I know there's been a lot of talk on social media and others that we are interested in, that we're negotiating to sell the house and the barn as per the RFP. We are not doing that. It is strictly a lease and strictly of the property. If the lessee requires the sale, there is no deal, right? We're not entering in anything to sell anything at this point. We don't have, it hasn't been declared surplus. We're not at that stage, so. Do you have anything to add, Karen, or? So, okay. Anything else from you, Ryan?
No.
Okay.
Thank you.
Public input.
George Sanders, 672 Great Road. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to know why that at the town meeting, Article 10 was put on there. And then it came up that it wasn't properly in place for us to vote on, nay or yea on it. And because I guess the select board hadn't taken the action that was required of the select board in order for conservation to go with that 7 acres or whatever it is there. And it's my understanding that that property has been maintained by conservation.
The Conservation Trust.
Conservation Trust, yep. For since 2000, I think it was year.
Thank you.
2000 or 2003, somewhere in there.
15 or 16.
They've had that for a long time, and the town hasn't maintained it. Then there was rumors that the select board wanted to sell it. I don't know how true that is, but at any token, I think where we can put land into conservation and be maintained, I think that the town ought to do that, because we've been spending money buying land to put in conservation. So I think if we've had good keepers of this property for 20 years, I find no reason why that the select board shouldn't allow that property to go to the Conservation Trust. If they've been taking care of it, I think it's good that we have an organization here that looks out for nature of what we have in this town, because you can't grow no more land. What you got is what you get. Thank you.
So just to your point, we will be discussing this more when we talk about the town meeting breakdown, but the Conservation Trust has been the ones maintaining it which is a private organization, not the Conservation Commission. So,
Okay.
and the article was to transfer it to the commission, not the trust.
Yeah,
So,
I
but we will
understood.
discuss this more, so.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have comments on town meeting now or later?
Yeah, go ahead.
Saul Marini, Hartwell Avenue. It's similar to Mr. Sanders. I was disappointed to see the article put on the warrant and then withdrawn. I think the process, we missed obviously some steps, and so I think for the future, let's try and catch those things before we get to the day before town meeting, and whatever is required to have the articles prepared and have you guys have discussed them in advance. I think the other thing is that pre-meeting, I think, is generally for non-significant decisions. If you're going to have significant discussion there, have meetings that should be recorded. We're having lots of discussions about what happened and what was talked about there because some of us witnessed it, some of us didn't. There's not really a great record of what happened. The other thing in that room, if you weren't in sort of the Y that the two boards were in, it was almost impossible to hear. You kind of had to go around the corner. There was an air conditioning thing going on that made it really challenging to hear the discussion you guys were having if you weren't in that portion of the room. So I think, main things, let's try and address all the articles before we get to the day before town meeting or the day of town meeting. If we're having meetings and having significant discussion, let's record them, and hopefully we can not come to the same things again. Thank you.
Hi, Amy Charlo Lewis at Omega Way. And so my question is also in regards to Article 10. So in a perfect world, what is the process and the timeline for our town attorneys to give us advice or feedback on our articles?
So, ideally, we would have known all of the information up front. So there was some miscommunication with the town attorney on the process that the select board undertook. So.
Okay. So is it normally the process that you have all that advice before it goes to print? Is that typically what your process is?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. No, I understand. And I guess the other question I have is in regards to Lot 10. So I know that you said you're not really in a position to be selling anything at this point, and nothing has been declared as surplus. And that negotiations with the Jonathan tomorrow will just be about the APR piece. But I'm sort of wondering, are you going to, in the lease, have a lease to convert to a sale? Will you be using Lot 7 as a bargaining chip? We'll let you buy it, but you have to buy our problem child down here.
So we can't do a lease we are not doing any lease to sale. We're not able to do anything like that. We can only do strictly a lease.
Unless you come to town meeting and ask for it to be declared surplus.
Which we would be separate from a lease agreement. And then we have to go through the entire process again.
So it would be two separate stages?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Member update, you want to start, Chuck? Oh, I'm sorry.
Kristen Kazokis, Cottage Way. I just had a question in terms of the parcel of land that Article 10 was a part of, and with you going into your talks with John Bransfield, will the town land that's not APR land be part of your discussions with the lease?
So the RFP only included the APR land. It
Okay.
didn't include anything else, so.
Okay, so you won't be using any of the other town land in terms of your negotiations with the lease?
There is no plan to do so far. I doubt we do. I mean, the lease when we were going with Stormalong had some of the conservation land in it. That may be part of the lease. Well, it actually can't be leased, but it could be managed, right? So the area on the outskirts of the orchard, there's places that have apple trees that were discussed in previous lease agreements. There are no plans to do it currently. I'm not saying that they necessarily are completely out of the question, but there's no plans to do anything like that.
Okay.
So.
And is this a time to address some of my concerns about the proposal? And with you going into talking about the lease? Or is this kind of...
You have 2 minutes.
Okay. Being a land care professional, I have some questions in terms of what Bransfield Tree Company has proposed, because I believe on the October 21st meeting, it was said that he had an existing business. And it was kind of led to believe that he had an existing tree growing business, but I'm not sure if that's truly the case. So I'm wondering if there can be some clarification in terms of what his existing business is and how it relates to what he's proposing. Because I know that was one of the things that the Orchard Working Group wanted to, was really pertinent to their criteria. The other thing is that he spoke about how he already has a market for his container growing plants, but I don't know if his current market in terms of buying trees and reselling them in his existing business includes the type of trees that he wants to grow in containers. And I'm curious about what size container plants he's planning to start growing, because is he going to be growing saplings and so they need another 10 years to grow? At what point in time are they going to be marketable to his existing clients, and is he pursuing other markets than what his existing operation is? Also, is he planning on using the land to run his existing tree company? And will he be bringing outside material like soils, wood chips to our property? And when I say to our property, our town property, because one of my concerns is his use of it over the 30 years. I'm hoping that he's going to be improving the property, not creating something that if he decides after 30 years he doesn't want to renew the lease, we have actually more to clean up than just the trees. I'd also like some clarification as to what his plans are with the existing trees. If he's growing trees to sell, is he then going to be using our 5,000 apple trees and with his skill set be able to then make those marketable? And how is that going to, at what point is his profit from his commercial business that's not actually growing going to play into business and what we as a town are charging him for the lease and for taxes and all of that?
So they're all great questions. I wrote a lot of them down. I have not even talked to the gentleman yet.
Yep.
So,
Okay, we film you saying that again?
So, as we start the negotiation process, we'll try and answer those questions and fill this board in and others as the lease progresses. So.
Okay, I appreciate that, because I do know that one of the concerns about the other proposals was the timeline in terms of how things are going to happen and how MDR is going to respond, and are they going to be okay with that? Because his whole timeline in terms of his protection, against deer and all of that, that's not going to happen immediately.
Yeah.
And if he's trying to finance what he's doing at the orchard with his tree business, I'm just not sure if he's aware of how much that's going to affect his profit margin to be able to support that. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Questions?
Okay. Mr. DeGhost.
Yeah, so I just want to thank everyone that played a role in the town meeting. the residents, as well as everybody that put it on, whether it's the town administration staff, Lisa and Diane as well, Diane Corey and her staff. It was well attended, and we actually got down to business and were able to have a brief special town meeting.
I noticed you all escaped early, and Karen and I were left picking up the chairs.
I cleaned up all the candy. And the water. But as far as Shaker Lane Building Committee, the presentation was informative, and we look forward to a lot of questions, I'm sure, when people attend the sessions.
And they have a tour scheduled on the 13th?
13th and 19th, yes. Yes, we're Shaker Lane.
Thank you.
Karen?
Just taking notes. Okay. Yeah. Echoing Chuck's sentiments, thanks to all who put together the town meeting and all who attended. It was blissfully brief, which was nice. I attended the Climate Action Forum put on by the Sustainability Committee, and it was a really productive evening and really valuable, and I hope that more people will come to the next meeting as we're trying to work on developing a sustainability plan, right? Climate action plan, excuse me. We met with, or Mark and I, along with the Affordable Housing Trust and the Planning Board representatives, had a meeting with Lapoli Industries, Lapoli Company Developers, Sal. And we received some good information about what their plans are. I think they'll be at the Planning Board November 19th. 14th. To do some more presentations on their timeline and what phase one will consist of in particular, and what their timeline for that is. Most of it is tied up with the sewer, which is what we all expected. Clean Lakes is continuing to work diligently on working on funding sources. We've had some progress with getting the okay from Town Council on working with the Parks and Rec to develop perhaps a source of revenue through their charges. And many thanks to the Shaker Lane Subcommittee, Building Committee. The meeting that they hosted for us and others was really informative and helpful, and I appreciated their presentation, and I'm looking forward to the public forums in the future.
Good. I had a few things. Let's see. Police open house. I think that I attended that. I think a few of us were there. That was a great event for the community to come out and see some of the canines in action, and state police had their horse team there, so it was pretty good, well-attended event throughout the day. Trunk or treat, those who got to go, Friday night was fantastic by the Park and Rec, and a lot of the community was out there. So it's just a great event in a safe area, and behind the ball field where you don't have to worry about traffic. The kids can run around and have a great time. Thank you, town meeting. I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But I also wanted to thank the collective bargaining team for the fire department. That kind of goes, we don't talk about it enough, but that's a big deal to get those things done. So thank you to the fire department for their negotiating team too, for getting that done. Vote tomorrow. Don't forget, that's probably on everybody's checklist.
What's tomorrow?
I attended Rotary to honor George and John Borowski for was it Quilts for Heroes? Quilts of Honor?
Quilts of Honor.
Quilts of Valor, thank you. And
Don't forget yourself.
but I did not go. That was a complete surprise to me, so I'm going to keep it to I honored you, John. That's why I attended. So I think it was a great event. They did it at Alforno's luncheon. They tricked George into showing up thinking he was going to be a guest speaker, and so well deserved. Thank you.
Gary's being humble there. He was also
And-
recognized.
That's right.
He was tricked as well, I guess.
Veterans Day ceremony will be on the 11th, 11, so hopefully you can attend, and then I know the families and friends can go down to the VFW for a barbecue or luncheon. That I believe the Rotary's also putting that on, catering that, I think from Fornos or other places, I'm not sure. Let's see, what else did I have? Karen, you brought up a good point about finding sustainable. I agree. That just kind of reminded me, a sustainable funding source for clean lakes would be fantastic if we can find some way to attach onto that. Just town meeting real quick. In Article 10 specifically, I wanted to, apologize, probably is a good word for, to conservation, because I know what goes into an article and putting things forward and have an expectation that doesn't get met at town meeting. I've been there, and I do feel that there is some responsibility to be played by all, but I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. The timeline, I know some of the questions that were brought up of when we should have a meeting, we should have all these things ironed out beforehand. I think what happened was I had some concerns on the initial discussion, and it was basically just on, hey, let's get all of this land over to conservation. That was my original thought and intent personally. So I was a little off put with the article anyway, but that was kind of the end of it. We weren't going to vote on it anyway. It was a zoning article. But over the last 10 days before town meeting, and this is what's critical, is I was approached by people to include light and water in a meeting I had attended about drawing water from NAGOG, not this year, next year, maybe 10, 15, 20 years down the road, with the new litigation that has been signed off on with Concord, Acton, where we're going to have access to some of that water in there, where Concord has the first 700,000 gallons. So I had some concerns that I brought to Mark on how hard is it to get pipes through conservation land if that's where we had to cut through to get, as opposed to the select board land. We couldn't get answers that quickly. And lo and behold, there were some other board members that had some questions for Mark, and we didn't have time to meet right before town meeting, unfortunately. And that's, and so then we're faced with a situation where we want to be as transparent as possible. I know we talked about that. So kind of holding a meeting where none of this can really be discussed and ironed out would not be fair to the public either, to vote. So, but all that being said, it didn't matter, because I will say it, I think it was a failure from our attorneys not to catch that piece of that article, which required us to release that land before we can, to make it excess before we can actually sell it. So there is some culpability there, and I think that's something we're going to work hard with them on. And it was brought up earlier, that is correct. It should be done well before, it has to be done before print. And if it isn't done before print, it should be a pink slip in there explaining why we couldn't do it, as opposed to just happening at town, right before town meeting, and all of us looking at each other like, well, this kind of puts us all on the spot. And then with all the concerns that we had, there was no way we were going to be able to get that done. But I do want to say that I believe every one of the board members thinks that the land belongs where, with conservation to some degree. I had questions, and we need to have a joint meeting with conservation. We should have done it earlier, and bring light water in too, to talk about some of the things that I discussed. But also, I do look at Facebook, and I know, like you guys do too. A lot of questions I got answered by Miss Tyler Lewis, Amy, that I never got to get addressed in a meeting on what we can and can't do with that land, some of the original intent of the land, what the select board all has different visions for parts of that land. So we really didn't get to iron all that out. And a lot of that I think is on us for not being able to have a good joint meeting with the parties involved. So that's a whole lot of input from me, but I think that our boards, it's critical that we work together, and that was a moment that I don't think we did very well right before town meeting, and I hate to see time wasted on things like that. So that's, on a personal apology from me. So.
Thank you. I will address more on that on when we get to that item. My updates, the November newsletter is out. Please check it out. Also, as part of the newsletter, since this is our fifth or sixth newsletter, there's now a form. You can give feedback, what we're doing well, what we're doing poorly, what else you would like to see. So please fill out that form so we know what we can do better on the newsletter. Several of us went on a tour of the new senior center last week.
Forgot about that.
The construction is proceeding along very well. I think they're slightly ahead of schedule. It was well attended by the select board and the council on aging and PMPC.
It's like 5 tours went through there or something.
Yeah. I also was at we got an earmark from thanks to our representative Eldridge and Arciero for $100,000 for the solar panels to go on that building. So thank you. I don't know what I signed myself up for, but I signed up to be part of the Champions Institute. It involves 8 hour-and-a-half meetings, but we're talking about complete streets. So it's all around street design and things like that. So the first meeting was last week. I have homework that I'm supposed to do for the meeting coming up. But looking through this, like our complete streets plan is very dated at this point. So we probably need to start talking about what to do with that. So hopefully we can kick that over to the BPAC or someone else to help. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I think you need to give Mr. Ryan some credit about those solar panels, because I'm the one that told Liz and him to submit it to Jim Osorio, so you need to give him some credit.
Thank you.
Same to you, George, so thank you.
We figured you had to be involved somewhere in there.
Yes,
Thank you.
right.
I was working the other angle,
Thanks.
so. Thank you everyone that was involved. So it goes a long way to paying for them.
If I can just build on what Select Board Member Wilson had referenced the fire department negotiation, and I will tell you that was a very good negotiation. It was done. I am very, very appreciative of the collaboration between the union and the management. The culture has improved greatly, and I will say, I will put a tremendous amount of that credit into the chief and deputy chief's administration over there. They have done a great job in sitting down, communicating with the union, listening to them, and it was I'll speak for Ryan and myself that we've witnessed just the change in everything. It's just it's a positive environment. There's communication, there's trust, there's support. It's really very, very good. And our hats off to the fire department union. Outstanding job, and thank you for your patience and willingness to trust us on through what our goals are to get through a couple contracts. Also, would like to let everyone know that we have been awarded, along with Townsend, Dunstable, and Pepperell and Littleton, $160,000 energy efficiency conservation block grant. We will be sharing a clean energy manager, and Littleton's priority in sharing that clean energy manager will be to identify and start establishing a climate action plan. And there's a chairperson, Rumbacher, of the Sustainability Committee, which will be, has made a tremendous contribution to that grant proposal on what Littleton efforts should be. So that will be starting up very, very soon. For grants, we have another a Housing Choice Grant Award that was submitted through the one-stop application through the state. And that is a total of $120,000, and for income eligible individuals or families, it will be up to $7,500 grant to identify vital code violations. And that is a collaborative effort with EHS Buildings, and Affordable Housing Trust has also been a solid part of that process. So that will be rolled out in the very, very near future, and EHS will be the administrators of that. And in the event that there are some violations that go beyond the $7,500, EHS has the resources, and they know of other areas that if heating system or if something electrical issue, they know of other funding sources that can just complement that $7,500, which is fantastic. Board of Health has been working with Emerson Hospital and on many things, and one of the things is recognizing mental health. And Emerson Hospital is going to have a Yellow Tulip initiative in which there's going to be between 50 and 100 yellow tulip bulbs that will be given to the town free of cost, and they will be planted. And the Board of Health is going to coordinate with the Littleton Country Gardeners Club and to help determine the sites and the plantings. So which is very, very, it's a great effort on everyone's part. Flu and COVID clinic that occurred recently. 142 residents got flu shots. 42 residents got COVID shots. And everyone talked about 550 King Street. We've got sewer project, as many people know that we cannot, paving is not permissible after November 15th. And we have gotten approval from DOT that we'll be able to continue to pave. We can use the steel plates instead of having to fill in the holes up until November 15th. Then from November 15th to December 31st, after every single night that there is work to be done, the holes will have to be filled back in and paved, and then till the next night. Wow. So no steel plates in the event of inclement weather comes down, and then
they're asking for an extension, but
destroy
Is
the
that
plot.
final word, or is that?
no, that's what I understand.
They asked for the 30th and they got the 15th. That's how I understood it.
No, it's up till the December 31st. Anything beyond the 15th is
They have to
they
close
asked,
the whole entire, anything after November 15th.
correct,
Yeah.
till the 31st.
That's so that
Of December.
plows don't get
Until the
destroyed
spring.
when they get a
Right.
plate.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, that's, I have the DOT. So, which is, and I will applaud Nick Lawler from LALWD, who took the initiative and had reached out to the DOT Economic Development Regional Manager, and was successful. So thank you for that, Nick. And lastly, we have been presented with an opportunity to share a public health nurse with the town of Acton. Right now, our public health nurse is through Neshoba Valley, and we are just one of many communities that we share some nursing services. This will be more focused just between Acton and Littleton, so which is good. So we'll sit and we'll talk about services and negotiating costs and things of that nature. So I'll keep everyone updated on that, and that's it. Thank you.
Can I ask one question through the chair? So who put that together? Because I know we talked about collaboration on a lot of things, so that's...
Francis.
Was it?
Francis Daigle.
Oh,
The
fantastic.
health director. Yeah, he's done a very, very good job. Yeah.
and on the Board of Health side, there's the Narcan training coming up on November 19th.
That's right. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. So a lot of good things that Francis has been able to identify and take the lead on. So it's good stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to appointments.
Okay. Clean Lakes.
Appoint Kala Flannery to the Clean Lakes Committee.
Not here. Okay. I saw that. I mean, everybody look good? Yeah. Move the select board vote to appoint Kala Flannery as the Spectacle Pond alternate member of the Clean Lakes Committee for a term expiring June 30th, 2026.
Second.
Moved by Gary, second by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
And Kathy Coughlin to the Taxation Aid Committee.
Move that the select board vote to appoint Catherine Coughlin as a member of the Taxation Aid Committee for a term expiring June 30th, 2027.
Second.
Moved by Gary, seconded by Karen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Town meeting discussion. So, as we were alluding to on Article 10, there was a failure of communication between the Select Board and the Conservation Commission and the town attorney. We literally found out at 6 p.m. that we had to declare the land surplus before we could transfer it. The Select Board was, speaking for myself, I wasn't comfortable doing that at the meeting in the school library or on the town meeting floor because there wasn't an opportunity for discussion, and as Mr. Marini pointed out, people couldn't necessarily hear us or weren't paying attention to that meeting. So I have committed to the Conservation Commission that we will have a discussion, a joint meeting on this in January to figure out what we should be doing with that land, and decide whether it, goes to conservation, all of it, some of it, whatever the process is going forward. So, do we want to talk about anything else on the town meeting part, or any other comments?
Most of the items what we were able to deal with as a consent agenda, so so that helped a lot. I would note that the electronic voting, I think, is people are more used to it now, and it's worked very, very well. So no issues on that front. But for the most part, I think town meeting went fairly smoothly, and other than our issues that we discussed about Article 10, I think things went relatively smoothly.
There was the discussion on whether bills for prior years should be part of the consent agenda or not, since it requires a much higher
9/10.
It literally can't be.
So we should consider not putting it in the consent agenda going forward, just so that everything else doesn't follow that same standard.
It's typically at the discretion of the town moderator, but it sounds as if the town moderator agreed with that comment and feedback. So I think you're right.
I did notice that there is a small group of voters that just on everything, so that could end up really messing up a consent agenda pretty easily. We did it with
Any other discussion on town meeting?
I think the iPads seem to. Did you get
the poll pads? Yeah, the poll pads.
Did it speed in the check-in process? Speed it up?
I think it did, to the extent that normally before you had to do it, depending on where you were in the alphabet, and go down and find that spot. Now anyone could take that, take any of the people coming into town meeting to register them. So we're using them both at a voting place and at town meeting. So it's a great dual purpose, and the feedback we received was positive about that as well. So it makes it a lot easier when you just put in the last name and can register them. So yeah, score worked well.
Rob Rounce, 25 Juniper Road. I'd just like to ask if the select board will consider reviewing the multiple people that spoke about the marijuana provision, I think presented by planning. It seemed to me that while that passed and that seemed to resolve, I thought the moderator permitted an expansion of issues with regard to what is apparently a nuisance item that I'm not familiar with, but of some significance, and I thought that the impassioned pleas from the public were something that warrants consideration. So I'm asking, will you take up responses as was presented during the town meeting public comment about that specific article? Because I thought there's something there that should be scratched, and I've heard somewhat similar issues in the past, and yet everybody seemed to agree that the article that passed really does nothing with regard to addressing what sounds like a very significant problem for a number of residents. And that leads me to comment and ask you this, because I'd like to know your perspectives on it in order to then consider how to, I guess, excavate that sort of issue as to what are the possibilities for the problem that's presented, which I know nothing about, to be explored further and get addressed.
So I'll start and others can fill in where I misspeak, but that's zoning in a planning board issue that we really have no control over. It's the planning board would be the one that has to update that article. We wouldn't present something to update for them. They would have to be the driving force behind that. If there was discussion that the planning board wants to lower it to 0 potential grow facilities, in which case they would need us to support a ballot initiative, which would come before us. But other than that, almost everything there was a planning board issue. I have spoken to a few of the planning board members, and I think they're amenable to reviewing that and cleaning up some of the language. But it's something that has to go through them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we had, it was crossing a line of, was it going to affect some potential businesses in town? That's where we got into a debate with FinCom as well, whether we should be voting or recommending or not. I think we decided not to because it just didn't have the biggest impact.
Mr. Chairman, George Sanders, 672 Great Road. You got the letter I sent, right? To Mr. Donahue. There's a lot of problem with this Triple C at the state level. And actually the Inspector General had requested that the legislature step in and take over control with regards to this. It's a lot of problems. There's a lot of the business that's complaining about what's going on there. They did not vet it, that industry. They still got problems, and that's where I sent the letter, as I said on the floor there. I'm true to my word when I say I got something in the draft and I'm going to send it, because I decided after I got an email from Jim Assyrio office about that new law and the veteran law, so I looked into it. So that's why I sent it to Mr. Donahue, because there's a committee that's in the House that's set up for the Canvas agency. So that's been looked at. I guess there's a lot of problems that's going on there. So I just added on to the situation of what we have down here, and I included the letter that I think of his name, Mr. Cash, is at the EPA there in Boston there, because he said that the health board, and that's why I asked town administrator to send that over to the health board, because they had indicated that the health board and the CCC was the authority with regards to this canvas situation here in the state of Mass.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amy Tarlo-Lewis at Omega Way, things I didn't think I would stand up and talk about today. So I guess sort of bringing up the issue of the smell at the facility and citizens' concerns, I'm sort of just like tying it back to the sustainability and the climate initiative that we want to have, because I know, Mark, you're involved in the sustainability piece. Will clean air be part of that like planning?
I think they're just starting on this, so yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but hopefully.
Okay, thank you.
So, thank you. Okay, moving on, Collins Center.
Well, I know that the last, we met about that. There were examples that were provided to the select board and which direction on how you wanted to go, whether it was going to be a straight appointment, whether you're going to accept applications, how you would like to proceed, and then have a draft of the initiative of what you would like to undertake.
Yeah, the draft, I'm working on the draft.
Okay.
So that, I would expect to have you share, or next meeting we can review and
Great.
edit, or whatever we want to do. I guess we could, if I create the draft, we can pass it around, we just can't deliberate over it. Everyone can kind of do it on their own, then bring their
Right.
information to us.
Yeah.
But as far as the other question, that we could do, I guess now, if we wanted.
I mean, then I'll just take the finished draft and I'll submit it to town council for review and anything at that point. And then once that is established and how you would like to proceed to make appointments, then we will bring the Collins Center in as, having identifying, and once the members are identified and the amount of members you want on the committee, and have an introductory meeting with everybody and with the Collins Center included, and launch it.
Can we actually say if the committee will consist of 7 or 9 members? Because if you don't get 9 applicants,
You can put a range.
you put 7. Well, you want to put 7 to 9 because you have 8. You can't have 8. But right.
We won't vote on it. We won't vote for
Oh, that's
it.
true. So yeah, 7 to 9.
Yeah, number not to exceed 9, no less than 7.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think if we get 9 qualified individuals, we should have 9.
Right. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Very.
Because I think this is going to be a lot of work.
I mean, you would know better than I would. What if if you have 7 with 2 alternates? I don't know. I mean, because it's a long road. It's not like a month.
Yeah, one of the questions,
It's
you
like
don't plan on moving in the next 2 years, do you?
Well, hopefully not that long, but
It's like the master plan. I mean, it's a commitment.
it is. No, without a doubt. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good analogy.
Okay.
So,
So are we going to wait on this
I think so.
to talk about the number?
I think 7 to 9 is a good number.
Then we
and-
have to talk about the makeup. That's one thing we still haven't kind of ironed out.
right.
I mean, I know we were kind of, it wasn't a debate, but you and I kind of talked a little bit about, are we going to have select board members on it or not? And kind of differing opinions on that. So I don't know.
And a discussion has to also, the liaison between the Collins Center and the committee, and the committee itself.
Yeah.
So to identify that individual.
That being a committee member or
No.
a staff member?
Probably a staff member.
So we can talk if you want a select board member or not. What the
Yeah, I mean, I was
consensus is.
just more because, well, I think I asked the question directly to them, and they said, yes, typically there are 1 or 2 select board members on committees, but for Littleton, we're driving this. We're the reason why we want to go out and do this. This board, the five of us. So I think there is a vested interest to have some type of input in
And the conduit
to
to the
crafting
town
this.
administration.
Yeah. So that would be kind of that was my take, but I do understand some of the points you brought up about a
So
full.
I agree that we need a conduit. I just don't know if we need a member on that board, because I don't know that we necessarily should be driving the decisions, right? As opposed to
Pro forma.
facilitating the decisions. Facilitating a decision is made, not necessarily driving to a specific outcome. And I think by having one of us on the board, we have an overweighted influence on some of the decisions.
I mean, you can say that we can't be chair.
That's definitely should be true.
We've done that.
We've basically said we shouldn't be chair of any boards.
Right. I think that kind of helps put you in the back. But I think having individuals that are familiar with the process and the boards and the decorum and things that we have to do, I think helps. You know, we'll probably have maybe a mix of that anyway.
Of a non-voting. But one of the select board members could be a non-voting, like an ad hoc member.
Yeah. That makes sense to me too.
I think we should have a vote. I think it's one out of 7 isn't enough to carry anything. 1 out of 9 certainly isn't enough, but I think we have, as Gary said, I think we have a vested interest in the outcome. I think we have a lot of knowledge that can be shared and can assist with the process. And I think we have a legitimate interest in how this works out. I also think that we were elected to do this kind of thing, right? The residents asked us to be here to make decisions on their behalf, and we will be having residents who are coming from lots of different places and lots of different life experiences, and lots of different perspectives, and they are all very valuable. But unless there is a select board member on that committee, there's no one who is accountable, right, directly to all the residents. And I think that that's worthwhile to have.
I don't disagree with that. The only argument I have is any committee that we appoint is buck stops here type of thing. If we appointed them, there is some accountability there, but I like the fact that
and whatever they
to a degree,
produce, we approve anyway before it goes further.
Yeah.
So it's just.
Yeah, I mean, I could go either way.
I can go either way. I just don't want to put our thumb on the scale too much on what the expected outcome is.
Yeah,
that's my biggest concern.
Agree.
One of 7 or 1 of 9 is, to her point, is not gonna.
Yeah.
Unless it's my thumb, because it's a really big thumb.
Yeah, I don't think it should be half select board and half at large,
Right.
Absolutely not. But I think one voice is important.
Plenty of time to
I mean, we
wrap
can
our
also
brains
do
around that.
Yeah.
7 to 9 members at large, and then select board member can be a member at large.
Yeah.
That
I
helps.
can reject your application.
Right.
Just like
And it
everyone
also
else.
it can also help if people on the board don't get reelected.
Well, Paul Vella was on the Master Plan Implementation Committee, and he didn't run again.
Oh,
on the select
interesting.
board, but he stayed on the MPA, so, and Master Plan Committee, MPC.
Well, that's not going to happen here, so that's.
Okay. So,
What else do we have to
I'll
do?
continue. I mean, I'm open to continuing to talk about it. But those are my initial thoughts, is that, yeah.
So I guess we'll be able to come to a vote on the next meeting on that as well.
Yeah.
So I guess be thinking of the makeup. No, Matthew, hopefully we'll have our set. We
Yeah.
can lock it all down.
We'll have already gotten the drafts at that point.
Yeah, that's the plan, is to have the drafts. And then hopefully,
and I think you said an application process or
Or you just make
Or
the straight
appoint.
appointments, you just pick individuals,
I mean,
or you delegate.
1, 2, 3, 4.
they're all here.
Well, I mean, like, if the body picks 2 of the 7, or up to 9, or 3, and then if you want the school committee to have.
Oh, I see where you're going, yeah.
To have a selection, and not
So-
necessarily
Boy,
from
that
the
can
school
be dragged
committee.
out, though.
So I'm not in favor of having other committees do appointments because they don't necessarily have the vested interest in the outcome. And what typically happens when you do some of these appointments is like, you're next up for the committee and they may or may not show up or may not participate to the level that you're hoping they I would encourage anyone from the school committee, planning board, or any of the other boards to apply, but I don't think the school committee should say, hey, you're it, right? That's my personal opinion on that. I don't know if others.
I definitely feel that way with the school committee for sure.
I mean, we own this. I really think we have to take ownership of this. I mean, that this is something that we're driving. This is a huge deal on what could affect not only the composition of our committees and boards and our makeup of the type of government we run. But I think it's a huge impact in the community, and we have to be the driver on this.
I would encourage anyone from any other board to apply.
Yeah, I agree.
Right.
I agree.
But
you want that knowledge. We want knowledge across.
But I don't necessarily want the other boards to say.
Hey, you're it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
You don't think there's a difference between the school committee and any of the other committees, and that the school committee and the select board are the only two that are mandated by the state to be elected? To me, there's a distinction there.
I guess what if somebody doesn't want to be on this school committee? They just, I don't know.
You mean someone from the school committee doesn't want to be on this charter?
Right. Then you're like, okay, so.
Or their designee, like they do. I mean, they have a person on FinCom that they
That's
appoint,
true.
right?
Yeah.
I don't feel strongly about it, to be honest. I'm just putting it out there.
I just think we allow everyone to apply on all the boards and committees,
Yeah.
all the residents. We vet, we can talk about what we're looking for. I think a diverse group, and definitely not all individuals that have been on committees and boards. That's not what we need either.
No.
But we definitely have to have that knowledge on that board. Are we going to have some type of requirements? Does this go through Diane? Does it get published put out that way typically?
Query?
Yeah, the town clerk, so then people can apply to it that way. Do we have questions that you must be a resident, you must have been a resident. You must not be planning to move in the next.
I'll see.
There's little things that.
I'll see if there's a potential of an application
I think I asked the
sample
Collins Center that I forgot.
for them, or if they have a community that did go through an application process, we can get one from them.
Yeah.
And what the
Whatever community.
expectations are of the committee and the workload and duration, and
Yeah, I mean,
that would be good to get from the Collins Center.
Yeah, have it right up in front of the face so people know what they're getting into, and they say, yeah, I can do that, or I can't.
Yeah, I mean, it's generally, I believe it was probably 2 meetings a month, and probably 2 hours of each meeting a month. Is that what?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and look at it, 12 months. So.
Well, if there's homework outside of the meetings, people need to know that too.
Right. They did say that the liaison shouldn't be Ryan or myself. It's more. I think it's more of an administrative position. But there will be outreach opportunities, basically at checkpoints, maybe the beginning, the middle, and then the end for the public. It's really just when it'll give the public the opportunities to submit questions or give opinions or anything else. The other times, the meetings they're open, but there's only discussion amongst the committee members, and there's no public input at that point. But there's there's tremendous transparency.
If it's to be an administrative person, are we talking about mostly just taking minutes and
No, I
bringing
think
information back,
if it's
or-
something has to be coordinated, it's.
Okay, so we're not looking at a tax work-off person, just
Well,
a...
I think we should have that in addition to this liaison that you're talking about, but.
He's back, Joe.
Yeah, he's back.
Throwing him over to me for.
Because you...
I do think we should have a tax work-off person available to
Taking
take
most minutes and stuff,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
okay.
the less we can.
Yeah, you're right. No, just take
The
on-
less
yeah.
work that the more these folks can
Focus on the
focus
job.
on the issues
They're doing-
and not be bogged down, the
That's
better, I think.
One thing that was mentioned is a strong chair. So And that will, and you may want to take the lead in determining who the chair is. You have that option.
So that'd be one question, maybe for the question, if we do a questionnaire, is, are you interested in being
Yeah,
chair?
being the chair. We don't want to force somebody into being chair that doesn't
Right.
want. That's not, that doesn't.
Excuse me?
You don't want to force someone into being chair, nominating someone that
Yeah.
doesn't want to be it, then,
Right.
Yeah.
because it is a lot of work, so.
Right, exactly.
So you're working on
The draft.
a
and then they'll
draft,
share
and
the-
you're going to work on
Application,
application information. and
sample application to come in.
Expectations.
Right, and there are previous town managers that, such as when Tingsboro made the transition, there is someone that works for, I think it's MRI, Bob Mercier. He was the town manager of Burlington, but he lives in Tingsboro, but he's retired. And he was part of their process, but he'd be happy to come here and educate the select board and say, hey, this is what I faced, and this is what some of the hurdles and everything like that. So if you want me to bring him here for the next meeting, I'll call him and ask him. I don't have a problem with
Let's
that.
avoid whatever mistakes we can avoid.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
prefer that?
I think so,
I think the more input, the better.
yeah. Someone that's been through it versus,
I mean, there's a lot more to it.
not bringing Keith
We don't
back
even know
because
what
that's gone
the
through
whole-
the process.
This is going to encompass.
Right.
I'm not suggesting we don't do that, I just don't know if you want him at one of our meetings or like the kickoff of this charter committee meeting.
Well, last time we
Or
did both.
Yeah, I think there's benefit in both, but I think any insight that he can give us as we're kind of
Right.
laying this out there will be valuable input.
And I think the Collins Center, when they sit with the committee that you appoint, they'll be able to give a pretty thorough overview of, this is what's ahead. Here's the road.
Okay.
Buckle up.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Anything else?
Minutes,
that's enough.
turning into a pump.
Any questions on the minutes? Corrections? I didn't see anything.
Did I not? I know I came in during the executive session, but it says that I didn't vote on executive session. It's not a big deal, we've got 4 votes and I thought I was present at their executive session. It's not in the minutes, yeah, the 6:15 executive session. I'm okay with a 4-0 vote. I might have come in after you guys voted to adjourn.
I think you, that was to go into an executive session, not to come out of the executive session. Right, if I'm reading that correctly. Oh, no, wait.
We'll adjourn to executive session.
Yeah, would it only be an
Yeah,
open
yeah.
session that would be to go into
Well,
executive
adjourning,
session?
yeah, we're going into executive session, so,
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's probably-
Then you went
yeah.
in, you came out, I got you.
okay.
So it's good.
Yeah, so the executive session minutes will have me voting to, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
My bad.
Move that the select board vote to approve the meeting minutes from the joint select board meeting, finance committee meeting on October 21st, 2024.
Second.
Moved by Gary, second by Karen, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Move to adjourn the November 4th, 2024 Littleton Select Board meeting at 9 PM.
Second.
Moved by Gary, second by Karen, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Vote Littleton.